We'll go ahead and call the Ellis County, Kansas Public Building Commission meeting to order. Donna, please note that all three board members are present. Any changes to the agenda?
Not that I know of.
We don't have June 18th for Public Building Commission either.
I thought we did. We'll get him next time.
Okay. Presentation of the audit, Melissa Romey.
Good afternoon. I brought with me James Marsachek. He worked on the audit with me. And what we're going to do is we're going to start this year. We're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to take a look at the governance letter first, and James is going to go over that with you guys.
The governance letter should be a loose letter at the front of your audit binder. And this governance letter is kind of our communication of the overall significant audit findings that we had during the course of doing our work. If you look through there, there's several subtopics such as difficulties encountered, our accounting practices, corrected and uncorrected misstatements. Just flipping through those 2 pages, you'll see at the end that we didn't have any audit findings for the Public Building Commission for the year 2017. And I believe that's similar to what we had for last year, as there's no new findings found. The next letter I'll have you take a look at will be the management letter. It'll be separate from that governance letter. It's similar to the governance letter. It's just kind of giving you an explanation of some of the work that we did on our audit. But this goes into our findings of material weaknesses and significant deficiencies with the Public Building Commission. This year we had one significant deficiency that seems to reoccur every year, and that's not having proper segregation of duties. We know due to the budget for the Public Building Commission and it being such a small size that it's not feasible to actually have multiple employees provide proper segregation of duties. This is a common occurrence on a lot of the Public Building Commissions that we work on. And I believe Melissa is going to go over the rest of the audit report with you.
Yes, so I want you to go ahead and open up the audit report. I'm going to take you back to page 4. The first 3 pages are what we call the independent auditor's report, and that tells you, again, as James had indicated, your basis of accounting is underneath the regulatory basis of accounting, and you applied the basis of regulatory accounting in the proper manner, meaning you have no deviations that we need to note to the public or anything like that. On page 4, I want to call your attention just to a couple of items. You have a general fund that's in the Public Building Commission, and this takes care of your regular interest income, audit fees, or any other fees that would not be part of a project. You do have 3 debt service funds, and those were for the 2013A, 2013B, and 2013C bonds. And at the end of December 31st, 2017, you actually didn't have those. And I'm going to cover that in just a moment. And then you have 1 capital project remaining, which is basically the remaining funds for the 801 Main Street location. And that was originally put into the bond that you had. And so you've entered into, and you're currently in the process of spending those funds. So by this time next year, or at the end of the year, we expect that those funds will hopefully be done and the remodeling project will be completed. If you will go ahead and flip back to page 10. What we have is we have the revenue bonds, and those revenue bonds, we used mostly sales tax money to be able to retire those. And so again, with the sales tax coming in and everything, we were able to retire, first of all, the 2013 C bond. So in the last few years, since 2013 when we took out that bond to the end of 2017, you retired $9,405,000 on that project or that bond, and that is gone. Here at the end of September of 2018, you will have also paid off the Series B bond. And so you're going to make another payment of $2,795,000 by the end of September. And so you're going to be down to 1 bond. And then that 1 bond was segregated out due to some of the bond attorneys suggestions. And so we have $625,000 left on that bond at the end of 2017. And that bond will be retired by the end of September of 2023. So again, sales tax revenues are there to retire those bonds, and that's really good news for the Public Building Commission. Are there any questions on the audit report?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consideration of accounts payable, we had two, correct, Phil?
Yes, sir. You should have two payments for this evening, one to the architect and one to the contractor on 601 Main.
Would you like to make a motion to pay them, please?
I move we approve the payment of the two. I don't know what the total is. I don't have that in front of me.
Right beside you there. I just put it in there, actually. Benmore Studios and Paul Whitberger.
Move we approve payments to Benmore Studio in the amount of $1,004.60 and Paul Wurtenberger Construction for $29,700.
And I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0, Donna. Project manager report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Project Manager Philip Smith-Haynes. I am pleased to say that construction is actually occurring at 601 Main at this point. Most of the windows did get replaced. Work on the parking lot has started. We will have another construction meeting on Thursday. One of the commission members also inquired about water in the building last week, and yes, there was. And no surprise to anyone that there was water in the old environmental office that always gets water pooling in it when it rains. That's why we're doing all the work in the parking lot. There was also some water around the brand new windows that they had just installed. They think they were not caulked properly before the rains started. And then turns out they left a door open right before the rain started. So there was some water intrusion that way as well. So there was plenty of water in the building last week, but they have kind of learned to live with it at 601. So we're in the process of getting rid of all that water right now.
Thank you. Executive sessions, Phil, any? No? We will adjourn at 5:07. Ready? We'll go ahead and call the Ellis County Commission meeting in order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donna, please note that all three commissioners are still here. Change to the order of business?
I don't think so.
None. We have one group of prior minutes, July 2nd, 2018. I believe Phil had some changes. That was the only one, I think, that was noted. Stand approved as presented, Donna. I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through G.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda items A through G.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0, Donna. Issues from persons not on the order of business this evening. We have one, I believe. David Leiker, would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm David Leiker, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear my concerns.
David wants, okay. Hey, Carrie, would you mind coming up front to the front row, please? Please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I promise to be brief, short, and to the point. What you have before you is a bill that I received from Eagle Med concerning a transfer from Hayes to Salina on May the 6th. My wife required transfer from Hayes Med. Dr. Miller requested a transfer from Ellis County Emergency Transport. He was told, and he relayed the message to us, that they didn't have enough staff on hand available in the event that they left the county. Another phone call was made. Eagle Med was brought in from Great Bend. The very first phone call to Ellis County was made approximately 9 o'clock. Eagle Med showed up at midnight. My wife was transferred down to Salina. She got there about 1:30 in the morning. I arrived at 7 a.m. the next morning, and I spoke with Dr. Jake Breeding, who is the surgeon who performed the surgery. He informed me that there was staff, the surgical staff, and everything was on hand in place to do the surgery that evening when she arrived. Problem is, she didn't get there till 1:30 in the morning. Makes me wonder how much that cost the hospital to have staff on hand doing nothing. I have spoke with Kerry a couple of occasions about the protocol that he said is followed in whether or not Ellis County determines whether they will make the transfer. Like I said, the doctor told us they didn't have enough staff on hand. Kerry told me that not all the protocol was followed and that not enough questions were asked. I would assume, and I hope that you would too, that when the doctor calls for an ambulance, you respond with a truck, not with more questions. It makes me also wonder how often this happens in a week or a month or a year. So, my question is, who sets up the protocols? Who approves it? And why? I'm nervous, I'll tell you that right now. This is the first time I'm getting to do this. I've been on that side of the bench.
This is just like doing a Knights meeting, don't worry about it.
Anyway, my request is to have the Ellis County Commission, the Treasury Department, the EMS Department, or Kerry himself pay this bill. I've been paying Blue Cross and Shield premiums to the same company for over 30 years. Right now, our premiums are $2,200 a month. I'm also a citizen, a lifetime citizen, a taxpayer. To me, this fell through the cracks, big time. Kerry and I have visited, like I said, multiple times. He has assured me that they are changing the protocol on how things are done, how phone calls are answered. So, I ask you, who's responsible for this bill, me or you? Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Gary, would you like to come up and address the questions, please?
Address his question, or
Please.
Kerry McHugh, Ellis County Health Services Administrator. First of all, let me remind you that out-of-county transfers are a secondary role in our agency. The primary role is to provide emergency services within the community. The supervisor that took that particular call elected and felt like that there was not adequate coverage to send a truck at that point. I'm not sure that we got all the information that Mr. Leiker just talked to you about, but irregardless, the on-duty supervisor felt like we did not have adequate staffing to cover that. And so, as happens with those instances, they have a call tree where they just continue down the call tree to the next service to do that. Transfers like that are difficult for all ambulance services in the state. We're not alone on that. The problem is that we staff for emergency calls. We don't staff for those transfers. Depending on what's going on in the community, i.e. the Wild West Fest last week would have been difficult for us to move a patient. So they called Eagle Med to do the transfer. I can tell you that I pulled the stats for the second quarter, which would have fallen within this. We transferred 53 patients out of this community over from April 1st to the 30th of June. And those were requests made by Hayes Medical Center. And there were a couple in there from Trigo County that we covered for them, just like other services have covered for us. When one of those transfers come in, this is blank, but this is the form that the on-duty supervisor, it's blank because there's no patient information on it. This is the form the on-duty supervisor fills. And the bottom portion of that is specifically addresses those that are turned down. And it has a spot on there whether we turned it down or the hospital has canceled it. In that same period, I have 12 of these forms, 4 of which were turned down by us because of staffing issues and other things, and 12 were canceled by the hospital because of change in patient condition, or they weren't willing to wait when we said, well, we have a truck on the road and we'd be glad to do it when that truck gets back, but we're only going to send one truck out of the community at one time. So those other 8 fall within that time frame. As far as Mr. Liker's bill, Mr. Liker did not receive services from Ellis County. I do not believe it's Ellis County's responsibility for that. I'm sorry, we could not accommodate him that evening, and he feels like we did not meet his expectations, but we did not provide those services, just as in the instance I said that Trigo County was not able to fulfill those. We went over and helped them. We've done the same thing for Russell County. They've done it for us. Not one service in the state can cover all of those. They're very difficult because of the staffing issues. And so I believe this is Mr. Liker's bill, and the fact that he and his family incurred the bill and we did not do that.
So how often does this happen, Gary? I guess I'm curious too from David's. How often does this happen? Is this a daily deal?
As far as
That we
transfers,
that we
well,
turn down a transfer?
I gave you the stats.
You said there was 12.
53
Three?
transfers
12 that weren't.
patient. There were
That we didn't do?
in the second quarter there were 53 transfers that we did, where we moved patients out of the community. I had 12 of those forms. 8 of them were changed by the hospital, and 4 of them were turned down by us. So in 90 days, 4. But I would remind you, we do not staff for those. Those are something that if we could figure out a way to staff them, I might come to you to do that, because it would prevent things like this. Well, I would say that, but even then, we've had 3 requests in a day from Hayes Medical Center. Even if we staff 1 unit to do them, there's no way we could cover all 3 of them. So figuring out a way to staff those is very difficult. So we try and use off-duty crews so that we don't have people on salary. We try and bring people in to do that.
So did this kind of fall through the cracks or not? I guess all the information wasn't asked by our shift supervisor. That is correct?
And I'm not sure that we got all the information from Hayes Medical Center. I don't think they gave us all the information. I'm not trying to.
So what's the protocol on that?
I'm not trying to.
If we didn't get
throw
all the
them-
information, then
I'm not
that's why didn't we?
trying to throw them under the bus, because I think we have a bite of that sandwich just as much as they do. What we have changed is anytime one's denied by us, we have started to enter that into our QA/QI process. And that involves even the medical director, so he is looking at those also. So that if we have an issue, he has more clout at the hospital and can investigate some of those things at the hospital that I might not get to. So we've entered it into our QA/QI process that it was not in there at that time.
QA/QI process.
Quality assurance, quality improvement.
Okay.
So
So I guess my next question is, how come his insurance didn't cover that bill? If we'd used our services, I understand the bill would have got covered.
nope,
Means
not
Eagle-
necessarily. Not necessarily. Depending upon where you are with your deductible, I would assume if he got a bill from them, he probably would have got a bill from us. Because where you are with your deductible, your out-of-pockets and all that stuff, your write-offs, all has an effect on that. So they bill the same insurance company that we bill, and,
So Eagle Med does bill Blue Cross? David, did you turn it into Eagle Med?
Well, I had called the insurance company, and they told us if Ellis County would have provided the transfer, Blue Cross would have covered the bill in full, and that was wrote on the note.
See that.
Since they're not a network, therefore, they don't pay it.
and that,
They're not in their network, they don't pay it.
Membership, which isn't very much.
I can't control who's in network and who's out, just like we are not in network for the insurance company. We, being Ellis County EMS, is not in network for the insurance company that covers the Hayes Medical Center employees. We are out of network for that group of people. That's basically says that they're not going to accept the write-off. They will write Mr. Liker a check, and then it'll be his responsibility to cover what is left. But they will, in our case, they write Blue Cross and Blue Shield, since we are a provider, they write us a check directly. And they also tell us how much we have to write off. Now, since they're not in network, then they will send him a check and he'll be responsible for whatever's left.
Eagle
But-
Med, will you mean?
Mm-mm.
No.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
Oh.
We have not received the check yet.
Well, I don't know, I don't know where your deductible and those kinds of things are.
Okay. I guess maybe I'd encourage you both to have further conversation going forward and see where this ends up.
Yeah.
And it's also a cautionary tale as well, which from my husband's business, where people have come in and Eagle Med has not been covered fully by the insurance, and it's expensive, the flight, and there is a way via Eagle Med, and it's not Eagle Med anymore, obviously, it's something else. But you can buy relatively inexpensive compared to this, $400 for 5 years of a membership where you have a discount. And I know that's kind of day late and a dollar short on this, but
Now, this is a ground service.
This is a
and
ground service, so
That's a
it's
ground
different.
service. Now, I
I
think,
don't, now I don't know
that
if they
you're
have
talking
any
ab-
program that
Just
met air.
talking about
yeah,
air
I think you're
service.
talking about the air
Yes.
service. If that would have been an air bill, I don't know what that amount is on there.
It would
and I
have been
don't
much
need to
more
know.
than that.
It would be significantly more than that.
So is this the ground service, that the only one that's available in western Kansas around us?
I don't know that I can answer that question. I don't know who they called. You know, a lot of times they'll call Trigo or Russell County. They even call Phillips and Rooks at times. They have a calling tree that they call, and whoever they can get to do that, they call. I would remind you that under the EMTALA regulation, it is the hospital's responsibility to move those patients. And we chose to help do that because we felt like it was the right thing to do to serve the community. I'm sorry, we can't take every one of them, but we don't staff for that.
I guess if you two would stay in communication with
Okay.
each other, let us know.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, David. Anyone else from persons not on the order of business this evening? I'm guessing not. Mike Likers, maybe? No? No? Okay. They're just communicating. We'll move on to Melissa Romey again. For the presentation of the audit 2017.
Good evening.
Hello.
You're
And
back. We're going to do it again, same order we did
James
with
also.
the Public Building Commission. I'm going to have James go over the governance letter. This time you do not have a management letter because you do have several employees involved, and so you do have segregation of duties. Therefore, we did not have any significant deficiencies nor material weaknesses during the audit that we needed to report on to you as the commission. James?
All right, with the governance letter, again, it's kind of our communication of just any significant audit findings that we had come up during the course of our audit. We didn't have any difficulties with working with the staff. There was no accounting policy changes. Corrected or uncorrected misstatements were communicated between us and the staff, and they were able to take care of them. There wasn't any disagreements. As for audit findings, we didn't have any audit findings as well. Everything was pretty clean, run well, and easily to work with. So I believe Melissa will go over the audit report now.
Yes, so I'm going to have you guys again flip back to page 4. The first 3 pages, as I'd indicated earlier in the Public Building Commission, is the independent auditor's report. And again, everything was followed according to the regulatory basis of accounting, so there's nothing further that we needed to discuss at this time. On page 4, this is your summary statement of receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash. And this gives you a snapshot of exactly what you did through the year. It starts with beginning, unencumbered cash. It has receipts, or the next column is prior year canceled encumbrances, meaning if any encumbrances were not fulfilled in that fund or paid out of another fund and switched from where it was going to be last year, which is very allowable, then those are recorded here. It gives you back receipts or revenue in that fund to be able to continue on. On the receipts side of things, those are actual collections that you had. So it's actual money that you receipted or the treasurer had collected at December 31st. Expenditures are disbursements plus accounts payable plus anything that you had encumbered, meaning an encumbrance would be something that you hadn't received but you had placed an order or approved through the minutes. Then we come to ending unencumbered cash, and this is where you start your budget, as your county administrator has been working with you on. The next item then is you add back encumbrances and accounts payable, and that gets you down to ending cash at the end of the year at December 31st. I'm not going to go over all the accounts, but I did want to point out a couple of items. And the first one is the general fund, and I'm going to look 3 columns from the right-hand side of the page, and I'm going to look under ending unencumbered cash. A year ago, when we had delivered the audit report, we had said that you started off the year with $6,019,000. At the end of the year, you had ended it with $4,854,373. I know that you do realize that you had expected your cash to go down because a year ago you had some transfers in to replenish some funds and some sales tax revenue over some previous projects that you had done, and so the county had decided to transfer those in and get them caught up. You also had a couple transfers that you were intending to make during the year 2017. And those were like $500,000 into the Special Highway Improvement Fund, and the other one was about $654,000 or $640,000 into the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund. So again, your unencumbered cash balance was higher last year, but we knew it was going to go down to this. So there's no surprises in that number at this point. If we take a look at the Special Highway Improvement Fund, this right here is for you to do road work in the future. And underneath that, you had transferred in, as I'd indicated, the $500,000. You also had about $364,000 of reimbursements from state aid on some roads that you had been doing throughout the year. And so your ending unencumbered cash balance is $919,774. Another one, I'm going to jump you down exactly 7 line items, and you're going to take a look at the Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. And again, underneath this Capital Improvement Reserve Fund, this is where you can do infrastructure and make repairs, additions to buildings, county buildings. And at the end of the year, it ended at $471,000. So you were able to increase this by $68,000 this year. If we take a look at the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund, you ended the year with $2,885,065, which you had increased it by $201,000. And again, you have a capital outlay plan going forward for the next 5 to 10 years, and so you're following those. If I take you down to the sales tax fund, it's about another 4 or 5 line items. And at the end of the year, your ending sales tax fund had $1,333,000. Again, as we'd indicated, you use those funds in order to retire your revenue bonds this year. Debt service, I did want to note you're making transfers from the general fund into this fund. And so again, we did not expect this ending unencumbered cash balance to be at the level it had been for the past couple years. We'd expected it to be down to about the $60,000 level as you continue to retire those. If we look down underneath the 4 lines from the bottom of the page, underneath the general fund of the Rural Fire District number 1, that fund had about $130,000 decrease. But again, we took that money and we put it into the special fire machinery fund. And from that fund, then they were able to purchase some much needed capital improvements, equipment that they were needing. If we take a look at the year, our total primary governmental funds, excluding distributable and agency funds, you ended the year with $13,161,649. And so that is comparable to what it was about a year ago. I'm going to have you guys flip back to page 11. When we go through some, each year we do some unanticipated items or unanticipated walkthroughs or whatever the case may be, but an unexpected audit procedure. And so underneath stewardship note number 8, it talks about stewardship, compliance, and accountability. And underneath the first one, we had some revenues or some expenditures that exceeded the available funds in the return check fund, so that exceeded the available cash in that fund. We also noted that the county was not in compliance with the certified tax abstract, and so those deadlines were not met. And then we also noted that the county did not collect interest and penalty, late payment penalty and interest on taxes from December 20th through January 3rd. And again, that was not in conformity with the statutes as noted there. Going on back then to page 16. On this page, this is the recap of the county's portion of the debt. And so again, if we take a look at it, you do have a Series 2013 bond, which was for some road repairs. At the end of December 31st, the balance was $3,150,000. You're getting very close to paying off the revolving Department of Health and Environment, and that was on the Menger project a few years back. That'll be paid off here in the next 5 or 6 years. And then we have some capital leases that you have, and those leases, one of them was the energy performance lease, and it had a remaining balance of $277,605. We had a Stryker Flex flexible lease that was paid off at the 1st of January of 2018, so that one has since been retired. And then you make capital lease payments over to the Public Building Commission, as we had previously discussed. And at the end of this year, you will just have that one remaining. The Series A will be remaining. And then you do have a Caterpillar financial lease on a reclaimer that you entered into during the year 2017. So that's $609,666. If we also then take a look at your related municipal entities, which is basically the fire districts, you'll note that you have at the end of the year, $344,787 in principal balance left on those 4 leases. You did not have any budget violations that we needed to note. You stayed well within the budget. Transfers were made by the end of the year. Does anybody have any questions?
No, unfortunately. You didn't find any hidden cash anywhere, did you?
Unfortunately, we did not. Or fortunately.
Unfortunately.
Could
I
you
was
send you
saying.
back to go look again?
Well, we could look for quite a few days, but I don't think we're going to find any.
You're really tough to get along with this evening.
And there's a fee associated with
Yes,
that,
that's
Mr. Chair.
true.
There's a fee, is that?
No, she said she was gonna volunteer her time, she's gonna do it in the evenings. is what I heard.
If there's no questions, and again, anytime you do have any questions, please contact us. James or I would be happy to answer anything that you have, or if you need directed someplace, we'd be happy to do that too. Otherwise, if you guys would approve the audit report, then we know it's been approved, you've signed off on it, then we would send both of the audit reports to the state of Kansas as they require us to do.
Shouldn't we have made a motion to approve
Public building,
public building? Which we did not.
Probably so.
you can go ahead and make that now.
I can make it for the regular meeting, but I can't make it for public
We
building.
have to open that back up, don't we?
Yeah.
Again, it's not a time, I mean, if you want to take a look at it, do it next month's meeting, everything's fine with that.
And we have a special public building commission meeting. So we have them every week now, don't we? No, we can have a special one.
We won't have one till August.
We're
why we
back
can
on the
have a
monthly
special
schedule, but we could certainly notice one for next Monday.
Sure.
We might even do it at like 4:59 just to.
Okay.
I move that we approve the financial audit for Ellis County for the year ending December 31st, 2017.
And I'll second that motion.
Donna, we have a motion and a second to approve the 2017 audit. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
We'd
Melissa,
like to
James,
thank you. We'd also like to thank the staff that helped out us as the auditors. They were very cordial and took their time and effort to answer all questions. So again, we thank everybody involved.
Good
Thank
to
you.
know.
James Myers. How about Darren Myers, please? Ellis County Fire.
Everybody's name, James.
I was thinking James, and that's who it is.
Good evening, Commissioners. Darren Myers, Director of Fire and Emergency Management. Got 2 items on the agenda tonight to discuss with the Commission in regards, the first one, purchasing a new vehicle for the Company 6 Fire Department over in Ellis. It would replace a 1978 International fire truck with a 2009 F-550 chassis with a rescue body on it. We'd sent out RFPs as per county policy through several different vendors throughout multiple states. We did get 2 bids back, and we also got 2 no bids received, and several that did not send us anything at all. In working with Commissioner Hazelhorst, we did ask for one option within all of our RFPs. Something that we might be able to control is to look at purchasing a chassis on the outside of the proposal, so that way we could control that cost a little bit. However, the lowest cost for what I got from the proposals from, I remember they're all listed here, Lewis, Ford, Sourcewell, which is, we usually refer to that NJPA. Stubbs and Sons out of Colby, Long MacArthur out of Salina, Marby's out of Dodge, or Great Bend. Hayes Ford still came in with the lowest price on the chassis, which was the same price that the bid from Hayes Fire came in as. With that, funding-wise, it would come out of the Special Fire Machinery Fund, which is the transfer that we have into every year, part of the 25-year capital outlay plan that includes this price. However, it is under budget than what we had projected by roughly $22,000, which is always good news. And working with Commissioner Hazelhorst, we decided what the biggest part of that would be to move from a diesel chassis back to a gas chassis with kind of trickle down to a couple other parts on the truck, which was the biggest part of that decrease in the amount of that price. With that, I'd stand for any questions from the commission.
Darren, I got a visit with a gentleman on Friday, Eric Ward, which I'm thinking you may know from the Kansas
Forestry
Forestry
Service.
Service.
Mhm.
He was telling me they hand out free trucks. Have you ever checked into that?
Yeah, it's, I think a couple years ago we had this discussion. They have the old military surplus vehicles, and
They run them through their shop, and some may have 20,000 miles on, and some may have 30 or 40,000 miles on, or whatever the magic number is. But he said he's got a lot of fire departments looking into that now. He said he's got a waiting list, and he
yeah,
said
they
with
just got a new
our
shipment in too.
excellent fire rating that Ellis County has, he said, I can guarantee you 100% I can probably give you a truck. So he said, you need to
Sounds
have
like a
Darren
good
talk
deal.
to me if you're interested. But
The truck
they're
that we,
2.5 tons and 5 tons.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he also told me Friday he is getting some other trucks in that, I don't know what issue they are in the Army, but there's something or another, but they're turning back in.
LMTVs, does that sound right?
I think you're right.
There is what replaced the 2.5 and the 5-ton vehicles.
And they're on different chassis. He said some are smaller, but he said have Darren call me and I'll tell him what's available. So I just thought maybe you need to visit with him once and see what he has, because he said occasionally he's getting like 1.5 ton trucks in, which would be like an F-550.
Yeah, maybe a
650, probably
450.
or maybe a
The
450.
2 tons, the 550.
Is that right? Okay. But he said he is getting some of the smaller stuff in too, hit and miss. But
A couple things on those vehicles. When you look at those chassis, actually that's a lot bigger of like a 2.5 or a 5-ton truck is a bigger truck than what we're looking at here. But a part of with those militaries, they run different voltage systems on those trucks, so you'd have to convert everything over to it, which is,
well, he
if you
said
get
on
the truck
he
cheap
said
enough,
on the
you
newer
could.
ones, they aren't now, because he said they got Cat engines in them with Allison automatics.
Free
lot of
sounds
the-
pretty cheap. So,
A lot of those other trucks too, like the truck that we were looking at scheduled to replace next year, you can put that on a larger chassis, so that way you can move away from the 500 gallon of water and go up to 1,000 gallons.
Yeah, I think that's what he
And
said.
a lot of different options, because it's a bigger truck and hold that weight. It's a different style truck, obviously, than what we're looking at this year,
A little
but
higher profile.
I'd actually had it on my calendar. They just got a shipment of a whole bunch of fire equipment. I went out there several months ago and got a whole bunch of stuff from them. But that's something I'm actually hoping to consider for next year, if we can get a good used chassis and then outfit it with a different tank and rear body on it to save some
He
money.
said if we're interested, we want to put our name in like now.
Yeah, you think?
Preferably like 6 months ago would have been even better, but
The bad thing about it on those trucks, it's kind of the pick of the litter. You know, you can get a good one and you can also get a gem. But
well, he said they've been running them through their shop down there, and they're in the process of upgrading their shop now. And
if you can
more
get
employees.
if you can get one, you can tell, just like any used vehicle or piece of equipment, you can tell if someone's taking care of it or not. And
Like he said, some of them come in with new motors, new transmissions in them, and
Yeah.
he said, I mean, they're Cat engines with Allison automatics, so he said
those trucks would be good up in the north part of the county on those hills.
I was just gonna maybe encourage you to check with him before we,
before we
I
purchase
suggested it
this.
before we approve this, just to see if he has any smaller ones in. I ran out of time talking to him the other day, so we had to kind of end our conversation, but, cause he did say he was gonna probably get some smaller trucks in, that would be maybe the 10.5 series or smaller, so you may just ask him.
Particularly,
Ton and a half.
particularly
wouldn't-
as we go over the budget and see what we have to cut. It would be nice to get something free and then spend a little less trying to fix it into something that you needed.
Then some of them smaller ones are putting 500-gallon tanks on, I guess, and the bigger ones are putting 1,000-gallon tanks on.
The
Probably familiar with that.
Well, yeah, the issue that you come into with those smaller trucks, which they don't have, or the size that we have here, they don't have, is you start looking at the GVW of the vehicles, the gross vehicle weight. And it's not just the weight of the water, but you put the weight of the box, the
Body,
rear on it, and
chassis.
then on this type, it's a rescue style vehicle, so on those type of trucks, even the larger one, you know, those beds sit up head level, so all your compartments are up here, and you'd be lifting tools. So it wouldn't be, those trucks wouldn't be adequate for this.
Not like
But
a
next
5
year, definitely, I would
Mhm.
definitely like to consider one for next year.
But you might just,
But the
Calling.
F-450s and 350s, they're the smaller GVWs. And then we would look at safety issues because you're overloading the vehicle. You know, if the F-550s or the Dodge 5500, they're both a 2-ton vehicle, which the specs out for this one, you actually have to upgrade the truck packages to include that amount of weight on them. You can't just, I mean, you can buy one used, but you have to upgrade the payload package. You have to upgrade the shocks and the tires and everything to match that weight.
so if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to put this on the agenda for next week, if you'd call him and
I
see
can
if
call.
he has a smaller, like we're looking at there, because he said he was getting some smaller trucks in, so maybe just ask him, see what he has, because he said he's been getting different ones in, requests from different fire departments, which I'm sure you're aware of. But yeah,
And
next year, I'd definitely like to look at one for a tanker. I mean, they're 6-wheel drive, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
the big ones, so. Anyway, if you wouldn't mind,
I can do that.
want to move on to your self-contained breathing apparatus fill station?
Yes, sir. Second item is something that I brought to the commission several months ago in regards to a grant that I looked for. We got the grant from the Hanson Foundation in the amount of $20,000, which wasn't quite what we had hoped for, but obviously some free money is better than none. We applied for a second grant. However, due to the status of the Ellis County Fire Department, we didn't meet the needs that put us up on the priority level high enough to receive their grants at a national level. So we took the specs and we looked at what the other fire departments are doing based on our needs for the county fire department and put out a set of specs and got back different, you can tell on the back of this sheet, the agenda item, several bids from several different vendors. The lowest bid actually came in from Danco, which is out of Nebraska. However, their bids did not include shipping and delivery, which they estimated to be around $1,500 to $1,700, and then about the $1,500 price range again to add on to installation, so roughly $3,000, which would then put them, obviously not the low bid, and would make Conrad the lowest bid, which includes the shipping, delivery, installation, training, and everything that meet the bid specs, which would leave a remaining balance that would come out of the special fire machinery fund at roughly $11,800.
And you'll keep this at the Hayes Fire Station, I'm assuming?
Company 5, correct. It's about the only station in the county that has room to be able to mount it.
that in.
It's several pieces of equipment. The compressor is about 4 foot by 4 foot, and then you have 3 of the large bottles that go around to fill it. Then you have a frac chamber, so that way you fill your bottles, they don't blow up. It's probably about the size of this podium, maybe a little bit smaller. So by the time you add all those components together, it's about the best place to put it in the county.
Okay,
I
thank
could probably fit it in Munger, but they probably wouldn't like us too well. It's pretty small out there.
Sure,
I think they would rather have a bathroom with some running water.
probably. Ladies, questions for Darren?
All right, well, there are two things that you put on here. Approval from the commission to purchase the fill station using a previously awarded $20,000 grant. So what I would be motioning would be approving the purchase of this amount using $20,000 from a grant, leaving the county only the $11,798. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that it's a little clearer. I move that we purchase the Bauer Scuba Station from Conrad Fire in the amount of $31,798.02 for the Ellis County Fire District, using the $20,000 grant from the Dane Hansen Foundation. Thank you, Dane Hansen. Leaving the county's bill to be $11,798.02.
Okay, I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second, Donna. Any further discussion? None? All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Darren.
Follow up on that truck question. I will contact Eric with the Forestry Service in regards to if there's a vehicle size specific that would meet these specifications. I'm also going to recheck the Department of Administration to see if they have, I think it's Department of Administration, to see if they have any surplus vehicles in that size that we might be able to get a used chassis that
I
would
actually
work.
looked on that on Friday after I was done talking to Derek, but you might see what's out there.
Yeah. They usually send out emails to the fire districts whenever they have anything good for the fire departments, but I haven't seen anything for a while, so I'll come back next week and visit again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren. We'll move on to WIC letter of engagement. Carrie, you're the next two items.
Kerry McHugh, Ellis County Health Services. The first item that I have for you, it's contract night, is a contract between Ellis County and Osborne County for the WIC program. The WIC program stands for Women, Infants, and Children. It's a long-time grant that we've participated in. Osborne County is the hub, and we're a subcontractor with them. They deal directly with KDHE and then disperse information out to the rest of us in the area. In 2017, we received almost $90,400 in that grant. This year so far, we received almost 32. The reason we're a little behind, we're always 2 months in payments behind, so that's just the way they cut their checks. So with this, I would like to have Chairman Hazelhorst sign the agreement that is enclosed to continue participating in the WIC program. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are WIC days in the health department. We see lots of little ones, and it's pretty loud.
That means they're healthy.
I move that the chairman sign the WIC letter of agreement allowing Ellis County to participate in the WIC program.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0.
Poor Walt, he has to keep coming to every single meeting. It's as if he's a member of the staff, and
7th today, right?
The 9th.
9th, heck, 9th is good.
that's what happens when you're in a combine for
Yeah,
There you go, sir.
thank you.
that many hours.
I will return this to Osborne County. Keep a copy for our records, obviously. And make sure Donna gets a copy. The second item I have is a contract between High Plains Mental Health and the Ellis County Health Department. When Walt was here at budget time, he had mentioned it, and I've already also mentioned it prior to this. They're going to lease an office space on Thursdays. Originally, we were going to start maybe this Thursday, but I think we may push it off a week, and provide services within the health department. It will be all their operations. We'll just be the vessel for those operations. So with that, I would like your permission to go ahead and sign this contract. And just so you know, as the document says, County Councilor Jeter has already reviewed it and approved it.
Barb, would you like to make a motion?
I move the Health Department Administrator be allowed to sign the contract between High Plains Mental Health and Ellis County Health Department, providing High Plains Mental Health space to see clients in the Ellis County Health Department for a period of 1 year from July 12th, approximately to July 12th, 2019.
We have a
Down
motion.
to $36 a month.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Down, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Carrie.
I have one more item that wasn't on the agenda. It's just to inform you about something. I did just receive in the last few days notification from KDHE. We were awarded 3 grants. The state formula grant, which we've gotten for a number of years, $19,598. preparedness grant is $25,122, and the third grant is the immunization action plan, which was $4,627. That totals $49,347. That's up about $3,800 from what we received last year.
Excellent.
So, with that, I would stand for questions if there's any, and if not, thank you, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Carrie. County Administrator, presentation of the 2019 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. County Administrator Philip Smith Haynes. At what seems like long last, we have a budget proposal in front of the Commission for this evening. In accordance with your direction on June 14th, June 28th, and July 2nd, I have prepared the attached budget proposal. It does provide for keeping the ad valorem tax rate approximately level. It actually goes down a few thousandths of a mil because our assessed valuation always seems to creep down between July and December. Our appraiser and I visited, and if all of those outstanding oil protests are approved, we actually would need to drop it just slightly more to keep the tax rate exactly level, but the attempt is to keep it as level as possible. That provides a tax levy for 2019 of $14,410,402 and a tax rate for Fire District Number 1 of $535,787. We will have $22,376,201 in total expenditures in the general fund, and $633,346 in Fire District Number 1. And I've also included the capital plan. As the Commission is aware, we made some shifts between different departmental, I hesitate to call them budgets because it's an unbudgeted fund, but departmental pots of money in the capital reserve funds at your last meeting, and so those are reflected in the presentation you see before you. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions or address any thing that the Commission would like before we publish this and have our formal public hearing in August.
Well, the first most alarming thing is, and you can see through the budget audits, is that we slowly creep higher and higher of spending more money than we bring in. And this budget is...
Actually, we're creeping lower.
Okay.
We're just not creeping lower quickly enough. We're still
right, so spending
more than we bring in.
$2 million more than we bring in. And in order to not do that this year, it would really decimate a lot of departments. So you can't take it all. We're going to have to do more of a death by 1,000 cuts in this, but there's so many things I think we can change that I can't, there's no way to see it in these numbers that we receive. There's, paychecks. Why are we putting them in envelopes that they're being direct deposited and printing a paycheck? Why am I not getting that emailed? And don't hate to pick on Public Works. Why are we operating 12 graders? Can we add $250,000 per grader? Am I correct on that number? Can we go down to 11? every office, I think, has places that have either, we just can't do this. You can't do that in your house. You can't do that in your household budget. And you can't just raise the mill levy to cover the fact that we're spending more than we're bringing in. So I'd like to send this back. I've made all sorts of little cuts in here. I want to see if everyone could come back with more. Obviously, you're not going to come back with over $2 million, but you can certainly, I have to believe, you couldn't do that. If you have $50 in your pocket, you can't spend 60. I mean, there's a problem, a significant problem, and there's no way to fix it unless you start today.
As far as mentioning Public Works, Barb, I guess, as far as graders, we have 13 graders out there, correct? Yes.
There are 15 graders, there are 12 routes.
Okay. And I guess some of them routes, I guess I don't know why we couldn't run the same route with, or two routes with one grader. I know certain areas I think we could. I mean, we have a grader that sits in Victoria, and we have one that sits 4 miles away also at an individual's house that he has his own route too. And I know them graders don't run every day. So I know when we talk about repurposing employees sometimes, if we have one grader operator that's on his grader full-time, or part-time, maybe we can, might be some areas to look at saving money. I mean, I agree with that many graders in our county. I know how many graders Russell County has, but they also have townships too. But that may be an area, every time we replace a grader, it's around 240,000, I think, or 20,000. I forget what Bill has budgeted. It's in here, I know. But it may be an option if we replace one with one new grader, get rid of 3 old ones, and maybe look at combining some routes. I mean, 3 older graders are probably going to be worth $180,000 probably or more, 60,000 per trade-in. Might be an area there that we could look at cutting some money in that area.
I think we talked about vacating roads also at one time.
That was something we talked about too. I mean, that's been brought up numerous times.
These are all things that we are going to have to do, as well as look at a reduction in staff.
I mean, even
and not operating with as many people in every department.
Not to pick on Public Works again, but I know, they're talking about replacing that dump truck. I mean, it may be put a new motor in it for $25,000 and run it for another 3 years, possibly. Just an option. I know Bill isn't here to answer them questions, but
Yeah.
I was thinking that too. Why couldn't we reuse some of this equipment? I mean, it's just because the motor goes out. Do we have to go buy a new dump truck just because the motor went out? It might be fix it for 25 or 30,000, run it for a few more years. Because I know both of them in the budget. I think that dump truck was over 100,000, wasn't it? And the grader was 250. So if by chance we bought one new and got rid of 3 old ones, we might come up with 150 to 170,000. Getting rid of 3 of them, possibly. I know they're getting, 12, 13,000 hours on them.
Well, again, I mean, this is the conversation that we had last week. Equipment is different than operations.
Operations needs
So
to be cut back.
just getting rid of a grader will not save you operating costs. It's getting rid of the
One cost.
staffing and
Right.
the fuel and all
Short
that
on
that would be.
operators out there anyway in other areas as far as dump trucks and
Yeah.
that we don't have.
Down.
I know a lot of the
Which
grader
brings-
operators are having to fill in and run dump trucks when they're not on the grader. I think Bill has some of them guys doing that now, I believe. Is that correct?
I know they have one truck driver vacancy, and I believe there's another one who's retiring shortly, and so yeah, they do have some folks who are qualified to run heavy equipment who are operating trucks.
Or
hiring freezes, things like that. That's where we lower those operating costs and other places. Scanning things as opposed to copying everything, sending out. Just more can be done.
And we don't have a lot of options to raise money. Either you gotta do a mill levy increase, or you gotta cut expenses at the end of the day. Them are our options. I know we haven't done a mill levy, even if we do a quarter of a mill, that's $5-6 a house, right? In that area. But that isn't fixing, I know, the problem of
The
spending more
problem
than
is we're spending more than we're bringing in. How can we keep
and that's
asking for more money when we're not?
That is a trend that has to come to an end.
Yes.
You can't spend, $2 million more than you're making every year unless you're gonna raise taxes every year, but that's not fixing the problem.
And you can't fix it that way.
Well, no, you don't. You're creating a bigger hole at the end of the day. If you keep spending more than you're making, you're not fixing the problem we presently have.
I can go through it and just slash, but I'd rather have each department figure out what they can do without.
And I know we can.
And then also, and the hardest decision is the hiring freeze, is keeping and holding on. Trying to, when we unfortunately lose some people, not refilling the position.
Marcy, input?
Well, I agree with Barb. I think we need to have each one go through. I went through, and I don't know where to cut myself, but I do know, like she said, we cannot keep spending more than we are bringing in. We can put a hiring freeze on. However, I don't know that there's that many openings at this time.
I don't think there is there? Maybe
It keeps
Public
positions
Works
from
has a
being
couple.
filled, that open up
Yeah,
slowly.
slowly it would eventually take care of it.
One at a time. I think there might be one position in the treasurer's office right now. Phil, is there just one there? Do you know?
They had a new employee start today.
Oh. Forget that. Okay.
Filling.
So,
I'm happy to go through and get some
well,
of the
so
things.
staff has brought you a proposal that is in conformance with everything that the commission has directed up to this point. So, I'm happy to go back and talk with department heads about what we would change. But again, we have 7 days to do that because there's
That much
a
time.
deadline that
Understand that.
is,
So
And then
so
those,
right now we're 102 over budget.
we are not over
Well, not over.
the amount of the amount of spending proposed for 2019 balances to the amount of revenue that we expect plus the amount of cash carryover that we expect. On a single year basis for 2019, we are spending about 2.4 million more. Well, we have budgeted expenditures about 2.4 million more than budgeted revenues. That difference is expected cash carryover. I will say the departments in this organization have a good track record of not spending everything that's budgeted for them. So I agree with Commissioner Wassinger that this is a long-term trend, but it was a trend that we discussed when we talked about the financial forecast back in February, and we're here in July, and it would be very difficult to change that trajectory in the next week.
And this isn't something that just happened over the past 2 years either.
No, it has been a pattern that has continued for a number of years. The exception, the 1 year that revenues exceeded expenditures in the last 5 years, was in 2015, when the commission transferred $3.1 million of oil and gas depletion money in. And that's the only reason that revenues exceeded expenditures in that year.
So, we just have some tough decisions to make next week. See if they had come up with anything, and to start changing the trajectory of what we're doing, period.
I could probably just start with a hiring freeze, even though if we don't have that many positions open right now, but.
And
I have to ask what
raises.
staff is being asked to do. I mean, do you have a number in mind, or do you, because my fear is if you say to me, hey, go back and talk to department heads about what they can cut, the response is going to be $12.75. I mean, it's honestly, staff has brought you what you have asked for to this point. So if you're asking for something different in the next week, I would like to know what it is you're asking for so that we have a shot at achieving that. I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just need some direction
No, I
here.
understand that.
And that's the thing, I mean, we need to start a trend to where we're not spending more than we're making, obviously.
Cutting back by 2 to 3% from each budget, is there a way to do that? I mean, there obviously is a way to do that. I originally printed all that out for myself, or put it all in a spreadsheet of 3 to 8% cuts, which mean that we just, something has to change, and I don't know how to be more clear. It's frightening.
Part of the problem
And-
is, well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I say part of the problem is too, we have more services every year that everybody wants that we have to pay for than the state passes things down to us that we have to fund, we never used to fund. I mean, that's part of the issue too.
Very true.
And there's probably.
Adding to our jail, adding to our buildings, all these things come back with a 1% change. Or we can just cut 1% across the board and see where they go from there. Something just has to be done. And if they want us just to do it, that's fine. But I hate to do this willy-nilly. I think that when you're running your own department, or your office, you know better where you could take some of that from. Because the trend is that either we start doing it now, or we just slash things later.
Some of it may be simple, some of the things you mentioned with postage and different things, do it via email versus spending thousands of dollars on stamps.
And printing all this stuff.
I mean, maybe that's small areas to start. I know that's probably not, it's kind of like Phil said, you're probably talking,
Peanuts,
Yeah, it'd be peanuts, but that may be a place to start with 1%.
That's my suggestion, start there. See what happens there.
I agree. I think
And that's minute.
Say, Phil, start with 1% across the board and let us know where that comes in at. Is that what I understand from you, Commissioner Wassinger?
Let
And
them,
Commissioner McLean? Yes.
Okay, so staff will return next Monday with a new budget presentation that is 1% lower in general fund expenditures than the budget presentation you have before you this evening. And, he says questioningly, there will be no exclusions to that.
no exclusions.
We will not be trying to protect certain departments.
No, everybody has to
Okay.
be a part of it, including
You-
us.
Let us see where 1% is, and if you can, Phil, could you email that to us in advance before Thursday?
No.
Dean, I have 7 days to do.
You want us to do the 1% tonight for you?
Well, I can do 1% right now if you.
I know you can,
But-
That's not quite
but
all.
we need to see it in black and white.
I will get it to you as soon as is possible, but I will need some time to discuss this with department heads.
There you are.
Thank you.
As soon as you do, please let us know. Thank you. Anything else, ladies? I'm sorry.
No, I'm a bearer of bad tidings.
Marcy?
I don't think so.
Okay. County Council report.
County Councilor Bill Jeter. I do have an update on tax foreclosure. We're currently down to 20 different properties and with 12 owners. And I think that's our final list, so I'll be coming back with a resolution for the commissioners to approve, and we can get that process formally started.
Next week or not? That's it.
No, I can have it by next Monday.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Well, and what we'll do with that list is we'll get it to the 2 abstracting companies, and they usually between the 2 of them sort out who's going to do which certificates of title, and so, and as soon as those are done, well, those have to be done before we start the actual foreclosure
Right.
petition. So,
Thank you very much. County Administrator report.
I have nothing for this evening.
Thank you, Phil. County Commission reports, Marcy?
I don't have anything. I didn't write anything down this week. I did a lot of things, but I didn't.
Okay.
Not.
Barb?
Have a watershed meeting tomorrow. It'll be interesting to hear what happened after this deluge that we had. But other than that, I don't have anything else.
I have nothing to report either. Executive sessions, Phil or Bill?
Nope.
Oh. Donna, we will adjourn at 6:17.